Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching Top 10's Net, and in the video today it's another one in a series that we're doing. It's 10 more facts that sound like BS, but are actually true.
Number 10. Chicago was once raised 6 feet and no one noticed. There are some facts that you instinctively know are BS, even if you're not sure why. The idea that someone once managed to make the entire city of Chicago levitate 6 feet into the air without anyone noticing is definitely one such fact. For one thing, it's impossible. For another, well, just listen to what you're saying. You might as well claim that the moon is made of cheese. Well, sorry, but we're about to completely mess with how your perception of reality works. On New Year's Eve 1855, the Chicago Board of Sewage Commissioners tasked engineer E.S. Chesborough with finding a solution to the city's regular cholera outbreaks. Chesborough decided the easiest option would be to hike the entire city out of its swamp 6 feet into the air. It was known as the Raising of Chicago, and it was completely literal. To get the city out of the cholera-infested swamp it sat on, hundreds of men jacked up the streets using massive screws, filled in the space beneath them, and then caused the result ground level. The work carried on for 20 years and was often completely mad. There are stories of whole hotels being hoisted into the air and not a single person inside them realizing it was happening. Nor was it a temporary fix. The Chicago you see today is the raised version. That's right, Chicago is still levitating today, and no one living there has ever noticed. Number 9. Irish traffic police accidentally invented their own supervillain. Not so long ago, the name Prawo Jazdy struck fear into the hearts of Ireland's traffic cops. A Polish immigrant, Mr. Jazdy, was also the most prolific petty criminal the Garda had ever encountered. Over the course of 2 short years, he racked up over 50 speeding tickets in every part of the island. Stranger still, he'd never been caught. It gets weirder. Mr. Jazdy was a master of disguise. Sometimes he'd be dressed as a middle-aged man when he was stopped. Other times he'd be dressed as a young woman. Irish traffic cops found he'd given them a different driver's license every time they'd stopped him. He'd given 50 different home addresses and 50 different dates of birth. Eventually, a special task force was assigned to catch this international man of mystery. At which point, a native Polish speaker joined the Garda's traffic division. He took one look at Mr. Jazdy's file and probably fell down laughing. You see, Prawo Jazdy wasn't a supervillain, he wasn't even a person at all. Prawo Jazdy is Polish for driver's license. According to the BBC, Ireland's confused traffic cops had spent 2 years writing up tickets for different Polish drivers under the assumption that they were all the same person. The mistake was finally discovered in 2009, to the embarrassment of all. Number 8. The state of Maine has more black bears than black people. The northeasternmost state of the US, Maine is one of the most rural places in America. With a population of 1.33 million, it's not the emptiest state, but it's definitely kinda lonesome. It's also one of the whitest places in the whole of the United States. How do we know this? Because according to data from both the state of Maine and the US Census, Maine has more black bears than it has black people. Seriously, it ain't even close. The last US Census recorded roughly 19,000 African Americans living in Maine. A couple of years back, the state of Maine estimated its black bear population at roughly 36,000. In other words, there are roughly 2 black bears for every single black person in Maine. That's a crazy figure, especially if you grew up in a big city or in the South or on the West Coast, or well, anywhere but Maine. Nationally, black people make up 13.12% of the US population. In Maine, they make up just 1.4%. By contrast, if black bears were people, they'd make up 2.7%. Number 7. Congress name-checks Hitler 7 times a month. Godwin's law states that the longer an argument goes on, the greater the chance of someone bringing up Hitler. It further states that the minute Hitler comparisons are invoked, the conversation becomes worthless, which, when you think about it, is the perfect way of describing Congress. Both parties have been engaged in a never-ending argument for decades now, and both have essentially become worthless. We know this because they just can't stop bringing up Hitler. The non-profit Sunlight Foundation tracks all words in the official congressional record for their Capital Words project. The database stretches back to 1996 and contains millions of words. In 2015, they crunched the numbers for Hitler and found Congress name-checked the Nazi dictator an average of 7 times a month. Hitler has been compared in Congress to Saddam Hussein, to global warming, to modern China, to Gaddafi's Libya, to Sudan, to Iran, to ISIS, to the cloning of human beings, to the American military, and bizarrely to the Founding Fathers. No other dictator even comes close. The high point came in 2003 when Hitler was mentioned 93 times in a single month. Republicans mention Hitler slightly more often, with 57% of mentions to the Dems' 43%. But as the Daily Dot pointed out, no party has yet been known to mention Godwin's law. Number 6. We still have no idea how many people Chernobyl killed. On April 26, 1986, the nuclear reactor at Chernobyl, Ukraine exploded. The resulting meltdown killed 31 people more or less instantly and poisoned millions of square miles of land. At the same time, the World Health Organization estimated the disaster would ultimately cause 4,000 deaths from radiation-induced cancer. Over 30 years later, we're still guessing. Depending on your source, Chernobyl caused anywhere from a mere 53 deaths to over 500,000. The trouble is, Chernobyl blew radiation over such a vast area, no one really knows how many excess fatal cancers in Europe, Asia, and Africa are due to the accident. The UN estimates around 16,000. The Russian Academy of Sciences estimates up to 200,000. The Ukraine National Commission for Radiation Protection calculates 500,000. And those numbers keep on climbing. One recent high-end estimate pegged the total number dead at nearly 1 million. If true, that would make Chernobyl the deadliest disaster in human history, bar the catastrophic China floods of 1931, which may have killed up to 4 million people.
For comparison, the combined atomic bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima killed a maximum of 236,000 people.
That's right, the screw-up of a bunch of Soviet engineers may yet turn out to be deadlier than the bloody endgame of the most brutal war in human history. Number 5. Nintendo existed at the same time as the Ottoman Empire. One is a modern Japanese entertainment company best known for a certain red-suited Italian plumber. The other was a vast Islamic empire founded in the 14th century that was ruled by sultans and once laid siege to Vienna in Austria. Both of these things existed at the same time for 33 whole years. The issue here is that Nintendo is way older than you probably imagine, while the Ottoman Empire didn't fall apart till much later than you probably think. The Ottoman Empire only collapsed in 1922 as a result of losing World War I after the Allies carved up its territory for themselves. Nintendo, meanwhile, was founded way back in 1889. At the time, Nintendo was simply a playing card company, with nary an Italian plumber in sight. That's probably not surprising, as Italy had only been a unified state for less than 2 decades by that point, less than the time separating us now from the release of Titanic. Europe was still mostly ruled by the Prussians, Austro-Hungarians, Russians, and Ottomans, and Britain had an empire that stretched all the way around the world. Meanwhile, Japan had only just left 2.5 centuries of self-imposed isolation 35 years beforehand. Number 4. The ocean contains 20 million tons of unclaimed gold. Imagine if you discovered a near-limitless supply of gold sitting right under your nose. All your worries would be over, right? Well, we've got some good news and some bad news for you. The good news is that such a stash of gold really does exist, likely within easy driving distance. The bad news is that it's scattered over the entire ocean. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, our planet's oceans contain a staggering 20 million tons of unclaimed gold. That's enough to give every single person alive today 9 pounds of the stuff, or to just hold it for yourself and become the richest person on the entire planet. The trouble, sadly, is getting at it. Much of the ocean's gold is distributed on a very, very fine level, as in a single liter of seawater contains 13 billionths of a gram of gold. There's just no way of extracting that, and the stuff that's concentrated is equally hard to get at. The biggest gold deposits are buried a mile or two under the sea's surface and would require a massive mining operation to extract. Still, if you go looking, you might just get lucky. In 2015, the nation of Colombia discovered $1 billion worth of sunken Spanish gold sitting right off the coast of Cartagena. Number 3. The biggest quake in history hit 23 on the Richter scale. If you live in earthquake country, you'll know anything above a 4 on the Richter scale is terrifying. The 2010 earthquake that leveled Haiti was a magnitude 7. The 1964 earthquake that upended the whole of Alaska was 9.2. The largest in modern history was a 9.6 off the coast of Chile and caused 35-foot waves 6,200 miles from the epicenter. But there's actually an even bigger earthquake on record. It went beyond standard measurements and hit a devastating 23 on the Richter scale. The estimate comes courtesy of NASA, who observed the quake in action. That's right, thankfully for all life on Earth, the quake happened millions of light years away at a star known as SGRJ 1550-5418. The starquake was big enough to destroy everything in a 10 light-year radius. Starquakes are caused when the crust of a magnetar, a super dense neutron star that packs a mass of more than 1 million Earths into the area the size of Manhattan, cracks. The resulting release of energy is one of the deadliest events in the universe, and nearby planets would be wiped out instantly. One single 20-minute quake releases more energy than our sun does in 20 whole years. Thank God we haven't got any in our galactic neighborhood. Number 2. Antechinus mice are so sex-obsessed they literally screw themselves to death. You might like to think you've got going power in the sack, but you ain't got nothing on the Antechinus, a mouse-like marsupial found in Australia. The male is capable of mating for 14 hours straight. In mating season, guy Antechinuses get so much action that they literally screw themselves to death. We don't mean there's some crazy biological mechanism that causes them to die after reproducing. We mean they simply keep going for so long and so hard that their bodies are destroyed by multiple stress injuries and they die of a failed immune system. Think about how you get more susceptible to diseases if you're tired and already injured from playing football, say. Mr. Antechinus gets that times 1,000,000. Eventually his stress levels rise so high that his immune system cuts out and he dies. According to National Geographic, this malady infects every single male Antechinus. 11 months after birth, they become so desperate to mate that they wind up screwing for 3 weeks solid. Then they die and a new generation of boys are raised, who will also grow to have a libido even Ron Jeremy would envy. Number 1. You make history every time you shuffle a deck of cards. Stop watching this for a second and go find yourself a deck of cards. Got it? Right. Now give that mother a shuffle and lay the cards in the order they came out. Congratulations, you have just done something completely unique in the whole of human history. 52 cards may not sound like much, but it creates an insane number of possible combinations. Highbrow British quiz show QI calculated the number at 52 factorial, which means 52 times 51 times 50 times 49, etc. Written out, it looks like, well, I'm just going to show it on the screen. That's a pretty big number, but we're not even close to describing just how insanely big it is. The QI elves phrased it like this: if every star in our galaxy had 1 trillion planets, each with 1 trillion people living on them, and each of these people has 1 trillion packs of cards, and somehow they managed to make unique shuffles 1,000 times per second, and they'd been doing that since the Big Bang, they'd only just now be starting to repeat shuffles. So there you have it. If you want to make history, don't cure cancer or invent a new device or conquer half the world, just grab a pack of cards and get shuffling. We guarantee the results will be historically unique.
So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. And if you'd like to see more facts like this, let us know in the comments below. We could make a part 5, although it seems like we've been going with this one for a while. If you did like it though, do also check out some of our other videos, which are linked to over there on the right. And thank you for watching.